This time on Poll Hub, what's for dinner? Or guess who's coming to dinner? Or, well, it turns out family dinner is good for your health. And it turns out, despite what you might expect in the age of cell phones, American habits around family dinner haven't actually changed that much over the last couple of decades. We'll talk about that. Next, we've heard a lot about mental health, especially as it concerns Gen Z. And we're looking at the data, and we're discovering some things that have changed since COVID for Gen Z and the rest of us, and things that haven't. We'll explain. And we finish with a fun fact timed to the single most important day of every year. Lee's birthday, right? Most important day? Lee? That's most important day of the year, right?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Oh, happy day. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Barbara Carvalho.
I'm Mary Griffith.
I'm Athen Hollis. I'm Rebecca Hendricks.
And I am Lee Marigoff.
Well, at the Marist poll, we have an ongoing joke about having family lunch, our MIPO family lunch. But what about family dinner? Now, no, I'm not talking about us getting together every night for dinner, but having dinner with our respective families. Well, so are Americans coming together at the dining room or the kitchen table every night? Thankfully, we have some data to answer that question, and we need to go back to the future to do so. So in 1987, ORC Food Marketing Institute asked Americans how often they eat dinner together as a family. 46% said always, and 26% said usually, and only 5% said rarely. So, of course, you'd think that with the changes over the decades, those proportions would change. Well, not so fast. CBS asked a similar question in 2021 and got similar results. After 34 years, 69% of Americans said that they had family dinner most of the time, with only 12% saying hardly ever. So I was a little surprised about this. Barb, what about you?
Yeah, I really wonder where this conventional wisdom ends up coming from. And I don't know how it's defined, and we certainly haven't found the right question to ask. But I mean, granted, 12% of Americans in any survey is still a lot of people. But I think it is all very interesting to note that most families do try to get together in the evening at the same time to have a meal together. And so I'm just wondering, is there something else here at play? And perhaps the idea of what family is, perhaps, is something that has changed over time. You're shaking your head, Liz.
Here's the missing link. When people think about whether you eat together as a family, they're thinking the meal is prepared in the kitchen of your home, and then you eat. I think that you have to include in this, what are we going to order in tonight for dinner? Where are we going for dinner tonight?
No. You're still together. And actually,
well, but see, I'm not.
You know,
I don't think that necessarily is the way people interpret it. I think that if you ask people to say, excluding the times where you order in or go out as a family, how many people have a prepared meal in the kitchen of your house, the numbers would have fallen apart.
Okay, well, Lee, a couple things. We have some more numbers to take a look at, but I want to just interject here. I order in more often than I should admit. And I really think it depends on how you define being together. I mean, we talk about this. I've got 3 kids, and I never sit down. You're up getting who wants a drink, who needs this, who needs that. So how do you define together? I mean, technically, we're in the same space.
But when you were growing up,
I'm left by myself sometimes.
But when you were growing up in your family, I bet the kitchen was the source of the meal, not ordering it.
Yes.
Okay, that's my point.
Yes,
well,
but
I still think that's a different question.
It is a different
Lee.
question.
Here's another one too that I think you probably have a lot to say about this. In 1985, USA Today asked Americans whether family members usually talk to each other at family dinner, or do they eat quietly or listen to TV or radio. 76% said they actually talk to each other. Fast forward to 2021, and CBS News asked Americans a similar question, but they asked about whether there's texting, emailing, or talking on a cell phone at the table. And I was really taken aback. 41% of Americans said never, 29% said rarely. I want to go to their house for dinner.
Me too.
They're
Me too.
talking to each other and they're not letting people just stare at their phones.
I have nothing to say. I'm speechless.
Yeah, why is that?
Because I like to find it's a good time to catch up with the world, to share what the world is saying, and to follow sports events that I'm not watching on TV at the time. So at least I can
So,
stay
Lee,
up current.
when you're talking about eating dinner together, are you talking about the global community sitting down at the dining room table together?
You mean 58,000 people in Yankee Stadium all eating a hot dog? No, that's not what I had in mind. But I am surprised by this because I think there's an awful lot of iPhone checking. I don't think you're talking to friends at dinner on the phone, but I do think you're like checking out things you check out.
Well, I don't know about that because I think that may be a generational thing. Talking on a cell phone is defined in very different ways today. And it rarely has anything to do with talking. So there's lots of ways of communicating to other people. And I think that if you were in a family setting with younger people and children in particular, you would probably be banned from the table because you would not be a role model.
I have nothing to say again on this topic. Mary, what happens in your household if one of your children were to take out their iPhone and start looking at something?
I mean, I have to be honest, I don't do that altogether too much when we actually all do get to sit down and have dinner together. I'm sure that will be coming. But I mean, I have to admit, I'm an offender. If somebody texts me, it's almost like the Pavlovian response that I have to go and answer the text as soon as it comes through because I never know what's going on. But yeah, no, thankfully we haven't had that quite yet. We've had that in other environments, like if you're trying to have a conversation with one of my two boys and they're not answering because they're texting a friend or they're watching something on YouTube or whatever. But at the dinner table, not so much. But I will say that Gallup did do a report based on a global survey and concluded that social dining, eating with others, is good for our health. And I do believe that. I don't know about you, Barb. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think meals are a time in which we all socialize. It can be times where we are most comfortable with each other, most relaxed, particularly dinner, when for most of us it is at the end of our workday. But Lee thinks it's the perfect time to catch up on social media. And so I would caution anybody inviting Lee to dinner, whether it's in their kitchen, in their dining room, or at some of the best restaurants. If you invite Lee, make sure that he is the dinner speaker. And then that might capture his attention and take it away from his iPhone.
And that takes care of your...
Lee, what say you?
Well, I think Barb's just used up her most funny thing for the month of May. So we took care of May. I will say the following. If you happen to be watching a sports event on TV and you happen to be eating while you're watching a sports event, because that sort of gets to the topic, okay, I will be talking about the game. Barb will be playing some word game. I don't even know what it is. And occasionally, if someone hits a grand slam.
This is not at the dinner table.
Well, but if I'm eating dinner, I'm at the dinner table.
Well, I mean, there is something I think to be said for this idea of sports being part of the social experience, because with my boys, especially now, it is playoff season and we are New York Knicks fans, we are New York Rangers fans.
Good for you.
And if the game is on and we are eating, I mean, I don't turn off the TV. The TV tends to be on more often than not, but I'm usually the one who wants to have the game on. And then it becomes, well, are we going to get like finger foods or like fun foods to eat? And so it does become part of the conversation. I should be eating
at your house, Mary, because that would be my way of dealing with it. Watch the game, eat whatever you can grab, and just...
There is always a place at the table for you, Lee. We may not all be there at the same time.
Is Gen Z the saddest generation or just the most stressed out? Or maybe both? We've heard a lot about this over the last couple of years. Polling data shows that Gen Z is struggling with their mental health more than any other generation. There's a 2023 survey from the American Psychological Association that shows 50% of people aged 18 to 34 reported suffering from chronic mental illness. That's the highest rate reported compared with older age groups.
Yeah, and so the APA suggests that a lot of this may be related to stress, but what is it that Gen Z is so stressed about? The top two stressors in this age group, according to the APA, were money and health-related issues. 82% of people 18 to 34 listed one or both as a stressor.
Which is a stressor, I think, for a lot of generations. There's also been increases since 2019 in younger adults who say the economy and housing are big stressors. The economy number is a particularly big jump. It went from 52% in 2019 to 72% now. That's a 20 percentage point jump over just a couple of years. Housing went from 57 to 70%.
Right. But maybe the most worrying data from this study is this. Just over half of this age group, 55%, said that when they're stressed, they can't bring themselves to do anything. And 47% said that most days they're so stressed that they can't even function.
One of the things I think that we think about when we're talking about mental health crisis in America is we think to COVID, because I think it got a lot of attention during COVID. We were all cooped up and a lot of us felt new things. What, though, is the impact of COVID? There's been a lot of talk about this, especially among the impact among younger people. Well, this particular study focuses a lot on mental health and the fallout from the pandemic, but data from before the pandemic shows that Gen Z was pretty tense before anyone had ever heard of COVID.
Yeah, it seems like COVID intensified issues that were already there for Gen Z. In 2018, the APA's Stress in America survey found that 91% of Gen Zers aged 18 to 21 had experienced at least one physical or emotional symptom due to stress. So what were they so stressed about then? 75% said that they were feeling stressed about issues in national news, whereas only 62% of adults overall said the same thing.
And one thing about national news that stood out in that, they were particularly worried about gun violence, which makes sense. If you were watching the news in 2018, 75% of people in this age group said that mass shootings were a stressor versus just 58% for both Gen Xers and baby boomers. And it makes sense if you consider how many mass shootings in the U.S. have been school shootings, and this age group is the closest to school.
Yeah, but it wasn't just these current events. They were also stressed over the same things that they identified in this latest survey, money and health issues. In this case, clearly not health issues related to the pandemic, but in 2018, Gen Z adults were most worried about jobs, money, and health issues. Stress over money was named by 81% of people between 18 and 21, which, if you recall, is nearly identical to the 82% figure that we saw in their 2023 poll for those 18 to 35s.
I mean, money is always a huge issue for everybody. So the data seems to say that Gen Z is more stressed and has been more stressed than older Americans for a while. But does that mean Gen Z is also sad? Because we've heard about this saddest generation. The perception that Gen Z is the saddest generation may be due to their willingness to talk about their mental health. It used to be a huge stigma. Nobody talked about it. And now it seems like everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, so for generations, mental health has been something that most Americans didn't really want to talk about. But in that 2018 APA study, Gen Z was most likely to seek professional help for their mental health. At the time, 37% of Gen Z said that they'd sought professional help for their mental health.
And millennials are close behind. This is the next generation at 35%. But there's a big steep drop off after that. Gen X and boomers, 26% and 22% respectively, which doesn't mean that other generations aren't also facing mental health challenges, just that perhaps they're less likely to talk about them or address them. After all, that APA 2023 poll shows that mental health and stress has gotten worse for most generations over the last couple of years.
Right. And when Americans were asked to rate their stress on a scale of 1 to 10, everyone between 18 to 64 were more likely to rate their stress as an 8 or above than they had been before the pandemic in 2019. Only 65 plus showed a decrease in stress levels from 2019 to 2023.
And this doesn't seem lost on Americans. In 2022, Kaiser Family Foundation and CNN did a study about this and found that 90% of Americans said that the U.S. is in a mental health crisis. In this same poll, more than 1 in 5 adults said mental health, their own mental health, was either fair or poor. And what are we doing? What are we doing about this? What can we do about it?
So in that KFF CNN poll, Americans were asked about that, and 84% said that individuals and families should play a major role in addressing mental health problems. 83% said the same about family doctors and healthcare professionals, and a smaller but still sizable majority thought that schools and government should be involved. 64% said schools, and 54% said that government should play a major role in addressing mental health problems.
So basically, majority said everybody should be doing something. And this all sounds great, but even though people want healthcare professionals to help them, people find it difficult to get the support they need. 80% of the people said the cost of mental health care is a big problem. 63% of the people said that the lack of mental health care providers is a big problem for them.
Right. And even when it comes to leaning on family and friends, it can be really difficult for people to open up. A majority are worried about the stigma of mental health, with 92% of people calling it a problem and 62% even identifying it as a big problem.
So let's come back to Gen Z, because that's how we started. And there is this perception that Gen Z, there's a bigger crisis and that there's more problems. You're a part of Gen Z. We're not going to make you the spokesperson for Gen Z, but you're surrounded by lots of Gen Z people here in college. How are people dealing with these mental health struggles? And is this openness, do you think it is new? Look, I'll tell you, being an old person, that it is new, it is different. Do you think that makes a difference and that's going to change that?
Well, I gotta say, it's not lost on me that we're recording this during finals week. I think stress is really high on this campus right now. Everyone's feeling it. And I do think that the openness helps. I think that my friends and I are always able to lean on each other or make a joke about how much stuff we have to do, how much stress that we have. And especially as seniors, it's gone beyond like, I have a paper due at 5. It's like I have a paper due at 5 and I have to apply to jobs. And also the job market is terrible. So we are able to lean on each other a lot because I feel that we have a lot of the same issues. And we also are breaking down that stigma of talking about it.
It used to be that if there were mental health issues, you had to go schedule an appointment with a therapist, psychologist. I remember I went to family counseling with my parents because they were worried about me. And there was lots of reasons for that. I was still in the closet and did not want to talk about that. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But we went for a couple of sessions, but nobody talked about it. I mean, nobody talked about that. That was not to be spoken about. And that's why I'm getting it. I'm wondering if this openness, I mean, there's apps for this now. There's places you can get mental health help that were not available even 10 or 15 years ago. Does this make a difference, do you think, for your generation going forward? Not just now, but going forward?
I think it does make a big difference. I have friends that have found therapists that work for them on those kind of apps and websites like BetterHelp, things like that. And for some people, it hasn't worked for them, but for other people, that connection that they made did work for them. There's many licensed therapists on there that many people do connect with. And honestly, I found that just being able to talk about it is great. I mean, when I was in high school, I had started going to therapy, and it wasn't something I was talking about as much as I talk about it now. My friends all know my therapist's name, and I'm always saying, "You'll never believe what my therapist said to me this week, guys. It was so funny." And I really appreciate that because I think that the shame of having mental health issues can make it so much more difficult than it needs to be, than it already is.
I think there's the other side of this that you see creeping around, especially the darker corners of the internet, which is that, everybody's got something, and that mental health issues are overdiagnosed, or everybody talks about it, like everybody's got to have one. Do you think, I mean, there's always that kind of thing with any issue. There's always the pushback or the other side that comes from a different place. Do you think there's any reality to that? Do you hear that among any of your friends or any of your peer group?
I think you do hear that from people. I mean, I see it more online than I hear it in person. But I think that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I'd say that everybody is different. I would say that like there probably isn't a normal mental level of mental health. I would say that we probably all have our own struggles, our own areas where we could improve things that would make our lives easier, less stressful. And I think that opening up and having less stigma and saying everyone should be in therapy, there's things that everyone can learn about themselves and work on for themselves in their lives, is better for everyone. And I think saying that we're overdiagnosing and seeing mental health issues that aren't there, I don't think that's accurate. I think that everybody has something that they could improve upon or something that would help their lives through going in and talking to a therapist and talking this out with someone who is equipped to deal with this.
Or just being more open, like we've talked about being
Yeah.
more open. I think that's a really good point, and it gets back to the thing that I wanted to end on, which is that the majority of Americans think, that there's a crisis, and the majority think that government, schools, people, families, majorities think all of those people should be doing something. And I just wonder, is that the whole, society needs to deal with it? Well, there is no society. You can't hold society responsible because there is no such thing as an entity of society that can do something, right? It's much more ephemeral. What do you see as the place where the pressure can be applied to actually get improvements in the availability of mental health care?
That's a tough question. I think that it needs to be something that's considered a more significant medical issue. I think that we should be seeing it more. It should be covered more by insurance. I think that we should be seeing more availability of healthcare and mental health care that is affordable for Americans. I think that one of the biggest things that turns people away beyond stigma, once you get past that stigma, is that they can't afford it or that there's no one in their area. And I think that if we had more money in insurance, more money in like national, federal healthcare for mental health, it would be more people would be therapists if there was money in it for them, if there was jobs in it for them, and more people would be going to therapy if it was affordable and possible for them.
That's a good point. And maybe that's the thing to focus on is stop calling it mental health. It's health. It's healthcare. And if we're going to pay for healthcare, if we're going to have healthcare for Americans, then we ought to have healthcare for Americans. And that includes mental health, which is no different than cardiac health or skin health or dental health or heart health, whatever you want. That's cardiac health, whatever you want to call it. Same thing, right?
Yeah, it can be just as important, if not more. I mean, that's something that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. You're not necessarily breaking your bones and having a cavity every single day, but you might have anxiety every single day, and this could really change so many people's lives.
All right, changing gears. There is the old slogan, is better to receive to give. However,
No, I don't think it
no.
works that way. It's better to give.
Did you do that on purposely?
Well,
Was that on purpose?
no, I have it written. It's better to give than receive. And I said it the wrong way. I have it right here.
I think
That's
give,
a Freudian slip.
receive.
that's Freudian.
Yeah.
That is the definition of a Freudian slip.
Okay. So I'm not sure whether this is going to be actually used or not because there may be some mean editing on this particular segment. But I will pretend that we're starting again and say that in the fun fact, we do know that there is a slogan, it is better to give than receive. However, the fun fact deals with receiving gifts and whether you like to get certain types of gifts or not. Now, there's a long list, and number 1 is clothing. Ugh, who would say that? Number 2, flowers and houseplants. Not me. Number 3, tickets to entertainment or sporting events. Aha, we may have gotten onto something. Perfume or cologne? Definitely not. Oh, I missed jewelry. Definitely not anyway. Food? Loser. There's only one thing in here that I would like to receive, and that is tickets to entertainment or sporting events. Money down at the bottom of the list as a volunteer choice. What say you? I'm going to the seniors right now who are about to graduate and be the recipient of major gifts. So, Athen, and now I'm going to start welling up because it's not your last appearance, but I'm just going to pretend like life is just going to go on without change, even though you graduate.
Well, I would say maybe not clothes. I'm with you on the clothes. I think it's hard for people to know your size and like what you're going to wear. But as someone who's graduating with little fun, I would say money. That would be my number 1 choice at this moment in time.
And is there a go?
do gift cards count? Do
Gift
gift
cards
cards count?
Very good. Rebecca, what else is going on in your life that you want to be the recipient of?
I gotta say, I think it really depends on the context of why I'm getting this gift, what I want to receive. If somebody's giving me a graduation gift, I do feel like it's more often than not they're gonna give me money, and I'm gonna be excited about that.
Good.
But I do like for my birthday. Honestly, I'm a big fan of a handmade gift. But if I had to pick something on this list, probably a book. I like something nice and thoughtful. Yeah.
Wow. What kind of book would you like to get?
Well, actually,
Not for her graduation,
not
though.
for
That would be your
graduation, guys.
birthday.
Not for my
A book
graduation,
filled
don't give
with
me a book.
money is what she wants for
Open-
graduation.
Open your wallet, Lee. Money.
I don't know. Well, over the summer, last summer for my birthday, my friends got me a Barnes and Noble membership so that I could buy my own
Wow.
books. But they paid for the membership for a year, so that was really nice of them.
I think that's a very thoughtful, educated, collegial kind of thing to do. Barbara Carvalho, what might you like to get? Your birthday's not for several months yet, but I may have to start saving now.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I just like presents. Although I'm probably down on the clothing thing because I totally agree with everybody that, yeah, the style, the size, it's a complicated gift unless you really know somebody. So, but other than that, I like prizes. I love prizes.
Okay.
I love surprises.
Well, that
So I'm actually pretty easy.
yes. Yeah, go back to Rebecca. I just saw that book is volunteered 2%. Did offer books, so there are people like you. Mary, you like a surprise?
I do. I will never turn down a gift, and I will always be appreciative because there's always some thought involved in it. That said, I do agree with you. I love experiential gifts. I love going to a
Yeah.
show or to a sporting event and having a memory because that you take with you. It never wears out. You never lose it. Hopefully, it's always with you.
Rain or shine.
Rain or
As it
shine.
were. And Jada Dapper, the question for you is, would you rather give or receive a gift?
Oh, you didn't ask that of anybody else. Why do I have to answer
That was mean, Lee.
All right.
That's not fair. I actually like giving. I actually do prefer giving because I love the idea of coming up with something and the reaction and all that. And I'd rather buy my own gifts, to be honest with you. Money's good, but I'd rather buy my own gifts. Hey, but I have a question. So the national holiday, Lee Miringoff's birthday was last week. What did you get for your birthday?
Well, I think that there was a lot of things because, as you say, it's a national holiday, so that I can accept things from around the country. But there is a special gift which I haven't seen yet because it's just arrived, and it is a kind of like a game which has the ice hockey game, but also ping pong and a little pool. It's all like 3-in-1 or 4-in-1, and I suspect if I put that in the office, around the campus, people hearing a ping pong ball going back and forth as opposed to
Now, this is a tabletop version. though.
tabletops.
Yes.
So that's experiential. I mean, it's not tickets but that's experiential, right?
I think that's a very good. There's a rumor that there may be some baseball tickets in my future also, which is always a good thing because that's, as Mary said, it's memorable. It might not be something you think to do for yourself, but then when you have a good excuse, like you have the tickets in your hand, away you go. That's a winner. I can't think of any sporting event I'd like not to go to. That's definitely a winner. Well, I hope that going to the recent or the soon-to-be college graduates, I hope your families were listening to this, that there's a lot of money coming your way. And I think you probably should say, hi, everybody who's coming to graduation, why don't you listen to this week's podcast? Because there may be a not-so-veiled message there. But are we going to say anything to these two folks as they go off into the hinterlands?
Well, Athens not going
I
off
know.
into the hinterlands. She's gonna work with us for the remainder of the summer. She's been the producer of the podcast for a long time now, and so we'll do a setup for her. For Rebecca, this is her last podcast. The segment was the last segment she's done for us, and you've been great. It's been great to have you on board, and you're the first person I think that we've ever had come in and instantly be like the podcast pro. Like the very first segment you did, I was like, okay, how did I miss in her resume that she does podcasts? Because you were great from the very beginning on that.
And she
So,
laughs at my jokes.
Kudos.
And that's why she stayed and got promoted 14 times in 2 weeks. It's amazing how that worked.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations, Rebecca.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the pay increase, Lee. It's been great.
But not to be subtracted from your graduation gift. Let's be careful about that. But anyway, you guys are great, and we wouldn't have been doing this well without you. We'd still be trying, but not this well, for sure. Anyway, catch you next week, guys.
That'll do it for Poll Hub this week.
Poll Hub is produced by the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer. Casey Schaff is our production supervisor.
The Poll Hub team includes Athen Hollis and Rebecca Hendricks.
If you enjoy Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review.
Positive reviews help other listeners like you find us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal.
If you have questions for us, tweet them at us at Marist Poll.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub.
And with any luck, it'll cooperate.
Finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button.
Click it, and the latest episode will be ready for you in your podcasting app as soon as it's released.
We'll
See you next time.